Former President Trump's one-time chief of staff claims that Trump wanted to use government agencies to investigate his adversaries. Charles Adams and Quanell X examine the issue in Fox Faceoff.
A tremendous amount of mainstream media outrage led by the New York Times from comments made by Donald Trump's second chief of staff, Jim Kelly, that he had been asked by the former president to weaponize the government, use the IRS to target his political enemies, all the way from Amazon's Jeff Bezos to the former director of the FBI, Jim Comey. It turns out that after Jim Kelly left the White House, that both Comey and his assistant director McCabe were subjected to highly unusual, highly intrusive audits. So it would suggest that those threats came to fruition. Everyone is very upset and everyone is condemning Donald Trump. I would like to remind, and I agree with that condemnation, it's disgusting to use our tax code that is way too complicated to attack people over political reasons. But I'd like to remind America that under the Obama administration, there was actually ultimately, under Trump's administration, a settlement from the Justice Department because they weaponized the IRS to go after conservative organizations.
But
I think it's wrong for both of them to do it. I think we should be outraged about both.
This didn't just start with Donald Trump. If Mr. Trump is guilty of this, then that is the fear that the American people have always had, that politicians would use the power of their office to punish those who politically disagree with them or politically fought their opinions and their platforms to get them unelected. Politicians have been doing this for generations. Go back to Richard Nixon. He wanted to do the same thing when he was having people investigating, snooping, breaking political offices. Go back to Mr. Ford. He was charged with the same thing by the public and by former elected officials. Go back to George Bush Jr. He did the same thing when after 9/11 he was allowed to use the IRS and weaponize it against those who he felt were supporting terrorists and wind up using it against those who were against him politically right here in the United States. Hillary Clinton did the same thing under the Obama administration. So President Trump only continued, unfortunately, the behavior of his past predecessors.
How do we fix it, Quanell, though? How do we stop? We've got to have a consequence. If it turns out that Trump, in fact, had the director of the FBI and his assistant director basically attacked by the IRS, our overcomplicated tax code, which we should scrap completely, right? We should have a simple, flat tax that addresses the regressive nature of tax to make it simple for all Americans to pay their taxes and get the government out of their damn lives. But how do we fix it? If there's not a consequence for Trump, there wasn't a consequence for the Obama administration. If there's not a consequence, where do we go from there?
The American people cannot look for politicians to punish themselves, because they will never punish the corruption and the wrong within their own parties, because the party's interest becomes for the best interest of the American people. So I would say to the American people, no matter if you're Republican, you're Democrat, you're independent, in the middle like I am, at the end of the day, we must enforce the consequences on corrupt politicians. Don't look for them to do it. We got to come together as a nation.
I would say to America,
and do it.
We have to demand a simpler tax code now that doesn't benefit the multinational corporations and the rich and the wealthy that don't participate. It looks out for the middle class and small businessmen.
I believe that no black man, woman, or child who are the descendants of America's former slaves should be required to pay taxes anyway.
You can watch much more of Face Off streaming Thursday nights at 7. Just go to fox26houston.com.